Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Payam Zahadat, and I'm going to present to you our short paper on the impact of multi-scale control topology on asset distribution in dynamic environments. The research objectives of this work in the long term is to develop a generic theory of adaptive asset distribution in multi-scale systems. And in this paper, we base our work on an extension of a plant model of asset distribution to be extended to a broader area, so beyond plants, and also to study the impact of topology on adaptability of the system in dynamic environments. When we talk about asset distribution, we can imagine many different types of systems. For example, in a business organization, we have several departments and each have several sections and subsections. And in the lowest level, the subsections are in direct contact, for example, with the customers. They provide some services to the customers and they make profit for the organization. For the system to stay in a good condition, it needs to be adaptive to the changes in the environment. For example, here in this example, in the beginning, we have a lot of demand for services at the right subsection here. And maybe after sometimes things change and we have more demand for services in this area. So a good strategy would be to redistribute the assets, the workers, for example, in this case, and allocate more assets to this area to profit to produce higher profits. Here is a very different system. That's a system consisting of different rooms connected to each other, and we have several robots as the assets of the system, and we have different demands for some work, for example, keeping the rooms clean. And these robots must distribute themselves in a way that they keep all the rooms clean. And a good strategy is to allocate more robots to the rooms with more demand for this work. And since the environment is dynamic, maybe after some time things change and there is more demand in a different room, and that would mean the robots need to redistribute to reflect this change. There is a big difference between this system and the business organization in terms of who and how the decision for the distribution happens. For example, in the business organization, we have higher level nodes, which are managers in the higher level, and they decide if the assets under their control need to be redistributed, and they make it to happen. But in the robotic case, we have a completely decentralized decision-making system, and while interactions between the robots in the neighboring rooms, they decide if they should be reallocated, and they make it. We can have the same perspective of asset distribution in plants. So when we have a plant, it has several branches, and then branches have leaves. And here we have assets being water and minerals coming from the roots, and they need to be distributed among branches. So the good strategy is to allocate more water and minerals to the branches who have better access to the light, so they can produce more sugars and more energy. And if the environmental conditions change. For example, here in the beginning, we have more access to the light at the right side, but maybe after some time it changes, and now we have more access to the light at the left side. So the plant reacts by growing more branches at the left side and maybe losing some of the branches at the right side. So we have very different systems, but we can show them in a kind of a uniform way. So here we have a graph assigned to all of these systems, and the purple nodes in the graphs or leaves of the graphs, they are service nodes. They could be groups of workers in a subsection of an organization or end branches that hold leaves, or they could be groups of robots that keep a room clean. And we also have the yellowish nodes, and we call them control nodes. They are in a higher level, and they decide and conduct the distribution of assets. They can be actual units, managers in a business organization, for example, or they could be some abstraction of interactions between the robots in the neighboring rooms, for example. So this work is based on an asset distribution model inspired by plants. So we have this graph with the service nodes and the control nodes, and each control node distributes the assets based on successfulness of its branches, and also a parameter of the system which determines the competition degree between sibling branches. So that means if one branch is better than its sibling, how much that should affect the distribution. For plants, the successfulness is reflected in production of some hormone that thickens the vessels. So a node with better access to light produces more hormone, gets thicker vessels. That means it can get more and larger share of assets. That means more growth and even more success in some cases. So we have extended this model to cover other types of the systems as well. And we used them, we tested them in various control topologies. So we used a growable topology here, a fixed tree topology, a line topology similar to what we had in the robot case, a circle topology, complete network, and all-to-root topology, which is basically a totally centralized decision-making. And we have an environment in the beginning. In this environment, it has 8 parts and 8 regions. And in the beginning, the left side of the environment is more profitable. There is more need for work in the left side. After some time, it would switch to the right side, and then it will be back to the left side. And the question is that what is the impact of topology on the asset distribution? And we take into account the competition parameter as well. So here is a picture from the paper. I'm not going to into too much details of that, but I would just like to point you to the fact that we have different topologies here and different competition factors. And these different colors show different regions. And you see that with a competition factor of 0, when there is no competition between the sibling branches, everything, all the assets get uniformly distributed. And when we go with higher competition factors, the system would react differently depending on the topology. But in all the systems, it can get stuck into some situation, and it can, at some point it's not really adaptable. So it doesn't adapt to the changes in the environment. So to summarize the key insights that we got from this study is that topologies that allow further asset specialization, like growing, are more adaptable to unforeseen opportunities and can provide higher profit than static topologies. Also, multi-root topologies incur higher delays than tree topologies. And while some level of competition between branches is needed for self-adaptation, too much competition hampers adaptation by causing overfitting and causing too much inertia. So thank you for listening.